are looking live at Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where a Soyuz 2.1A booster stands fully fueled, ready for launch to send an American astronaut and 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts on a 2-orbit, 3-hour journey to take up occupancy aboard the International Space Station. Welcome into the International Space Station Flight Control Room at Mission Control here in Houston at the Johnson Space Center, as countdown clocks tick backward for the launch of the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft atop its Soyuz booster at 12:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Central Time, 1:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, 10:47 and 15 seconds a.m. at the launch site in Baikonur. Earlier today, the Soyuz booster was fueled for launch by engineers in Baikonur, a process that was completed a few hours ago. The launch control team in Baikonur reports that all systems are go for launch, no issues being worked as the countdown enters its final phase. And as you can see in this live view at Site 31 in Baikonur, clear skies, temperatures in the high 50s for the launch in just a little over an hour from now, 1 hour and 38 seconds from now, to send Jonny Kim, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Alexey Zubritsky en route to the International Space Station. Here in Mission Control in Houston, the team is monitoring the Expedition 72 crew and station systems on the International Space Station. The crew has just been awakened for its workday, the highlight of which will be the greeting of the Soyuz crew several hours from now once they reach their destination, the Prishal module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The team here is preparing to support the arrival of Soyuz MS-27 later today. That station population will increase temporarily from 7 to 10 with the addition of NASA astronaut Jonny Kim and his Roscosmos crewmates, Soyuz commander Sergey Ryzhikov and flight engineer Alexey Zubritsky. The crew is all set to begin a flight of just over 3 hours in duration to the International Space Station. Docking is scheduled at approximately 4:04 a.m. Central Time, 5:04 a.m. Eastern Time, and automated docking to the Prishal module, as we said, on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the orbital complex. Around 2.5 hours after docking, the hatches will be opened between the newly arrived Soyuz and the station, and Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky will be greeted by Station Commander Alexey and his crewmates, Roscosmos cosmonauts Ivan Wagner and Kirill Peskov, NASA astronauts Don Pettit, Anne McLean and Nicole Ayers, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi. That will begin a handover period, resulting in Pettit, Wagner, and Ovchinin departing in the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft on April 19th, heading for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan after spending around 7 months aboard the International Space Station. Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky will remain on board the International Space Station through early December. The launch of Jonny Kim today mirrors that of Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, who launched to the station as part of the SpaceX Crew 10 Dragon Endurance last month, providing a reciprocal crew exchange capability to maintain safe and continuous operations aboard the International Space Station. Here in Mission Control, we're about to undergo a handover to the Orbit 1 team. The team here in Mission Control over the course of the overnight hours for launch and the subsequent docking of the Soyuz spacecraft will be led by Flight Director Anthony Varia. He will be joined on console by Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Aki Hoshide, a veteran of Soyuz flights to the International Space Station. The crew on board the station, led by Commander Alexey Ovchinin, is in its post-sleep period. They will begin monitoring the approach and ultimate docking of the Soyuz spacecraft, which again will be fully automated if all goes as planned through the Soyuz Corps' automated rendezvous system. The 2-orbit rendezvous will take just over 3 hours to complete. Again, docking scheduled to Prishal at about 4:04 a.m. Central Time, 5:04 a.m. Eastern Time. Half a world away at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow in the town of Korolyov, Russian flight controllers are also monitoring all of the activities associated with the final hour of the countdown that will lead to the launch of Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky. This is a view from the balcony overlooking the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Korolyov. The actual launch itself is controlled by the engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. Once the Soyuz spacecraft separates from the third stage of the 2.1A booster, control of the flight of Soyuz until its docking will be under the control of those flight controllers there at the Russian Mission Control Center. They will take over control at the point of third stage separation of the Soyuz from the upper stage of the Soyuz booster, as well as the solar array and navigational antenna deployment. Again, you're looking live at the Soyuz 2.1A rocket on its launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Atop the rocket, encapsulated in the upper stage, is the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft. That is the ticket to ride today for Jonny Kim, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Alexey Zubritsky. Liftoff again scheduled for 12:47 a.m. Central Time, 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:47 a.m. in Baikonur in the Central Asian Desert. The countdown, now at the T-minus 55-minute mark, is proceeding on schedule, no issues being worked by engineers in Baikonur. Atop that booster, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, that's the center section of the three-section Soyuz spacecraft, are NASA's Jonny Kim, Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergey Ryzhikov, and Alexey Zubritsky. Ryzhikov, as the Soyuz commander, is in the center seat of the descent module, flanked to his left by Zubritsky, serving as board engineer number 1, and to Ryzhikov's right is Jonny Kim, serving as board engineer number 2. The crew actually boarded the vehicle just under 2 hours ago after a very smooth morning of pre-flight activities at the Cosmonaut Hotel. We will be receiving a video of all of the morning's activities in Baikonur about 23 minutes from now. This is the first flight into space for Kim and Zubritsky, Ryzhikov's third flight into space, having chalked up 358 days of spaceflight experience on his 2 previous missions. The countdown is now at T-minus 54 minutes, 15 seconds and counting to the launch of the Soyuz MS-27 crew to the International Space Station. For NASA's Jonny Kim, today's launch marks the start of his first visit to the International Space Station and the culmination of a dream of a lifetime for an astronaut whose past accomplishments are numerous. Let's take a moment to learn more about Jonny Kim and his road to becoming an astronaut.
Lifelong learning is the life goal of mine. So when we start off in this world as really young children, we have this uninhibited belief in ourselves that we can go out and do anything. And I think along the way, when we grow up, we lose a little bit of that. We, as adults, as human beings, as learners, are always more capable than we give ourselves credit for. You're never too late to learn something new or start a new venture. Start a new adventure. Yeah, I had the honor of serving our country as a SEAL earlier in my life. And later on as a physician, and now as an astronaut. And I've learned unique things from all of them. This lesson I learned early in SEAL training to pass the crucible of this training. It's called Hell Week. And essentially, you're up for 5.5 days. No sleep, you get like a couple-hour break. But essentially, for those 5.5 days, you are enduring very harsh physical conditions. After 24 hours, we got our first meal in the galley. Hot food. You were still cold as you're sopping wet and shivering at the table, but it was in a warm environment. And one of the instructors said, I have the entire schedule for the rest of Hell Week. Who wants to see it? And about a dozen people raised their hands and they went over. And about a dozen people immediately quit because they could not humanly comprehend the amount of pain and suffering that was ahead of them. But those who just chose to focus on their next meal, they just had that to work with, not this. Any kind of goal, any kind of mission, if you just think about where you are in the end goal and all the work in between, you're never going to make it. It's too overwhelming. But if you break that up into much smaller bite-sized pieces, everyone can achieve greatness. And that's what we do here at NASA. Medicine's the last thing I wanted to do. I feel like the universe just kind of picked that path for me, like, you will do this. In order for me to join the Navy as soon as possible, I had to become a medic, or what we call it, a hospital corpsman. So that kind of set the foundation of my introduction to medicine. And then, of course, in the SEAL team, one of my duties was to be the combat medic. And I had the fortune to be able to treat people when they needed help the most. After my experiences in combat and in the military, I just needed to do something else, but I still wanted to serve the public and help others. And to me, medicine was the natural choice. And in NASA, I've been able to kind of put a lot of those lessons that I've learned in my life to practice here. I really feel like I was almost pulled in this direction. I had never seriously considered being an astronaut. It's not because I didn't want to be one, it's just I thought it was unattainable for me, especially as a kid. That started to change as I continued to grow and develop as an adult and have new experiences, and realizing, like we talked about earlier, about lifelong learning. It's never too late to learn something new or develop. And so I was very inspired by NASA. It was actually the first Orion mission, right? It was on YouTube. I don't know how it came on my feed, but it was an amazing narration of this mission that I knew nothing about. And that was the first seed for me to be like, wow, NASA's doing something incredible. And they are impacting the community and the world. I would like to be a part of it. And the more I learned about NASA, the more I realized that the same forces that had pulled me into the SEAL teams, into medicine, which is leaving the world better than we found it in our own way, I certainly think NASA does that very, very well. And so I became inspired. I wanted to be a part of the mission, contribute to the mission, and help inspire the world and the next generation to make this world a better place, because right now, it's the only one we got. I'm Jonny Kim, and I'm a NASA astronaut.
A look at Jonny Kim, the NASA astronaut who is preparing for his first launch into space. The countdown clock's ticking backward, just under 49 minutes until liftoff, as you are looking live once again at the Soyuz MS-27 atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster on the launch pad at Site 31 of the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the Central Asian Desert. Again, Kim launching today with Sergey Ryzhikov and Alexey Zubritsky of Roscosmos. Liftoff schedule for 12:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Central Time, 10:47 and 15 seconds a.m. in Baikonur. The countdown is proceeding on schedule. No issues being reported by the launch engineers in Baikonur. The crew flew to the Baikonur Cosmodrome from their training base at Star City, Russia on March 21st for final pre-launch training and inspections of their Soyuz spacecraft. As the three crew members completed their training in Baikonur, the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft was encapsulated in the upper stage of the Soyuz booster in the integration building last week. After the three stages of the Soyuz booster were mated together, the Soyuz rocket began its trek to the launch pad shortly after sunrise Saturday, transported to the pad horizontally on a rail car, in a process that took about 30 minutes to complete. Once at the pad, the Soyuz was raised hydraulically to its vertical position for final pre-launch preparations that have been ongoing for the past 3 days. As we monitor countdown clocks ticking backward for the launch of the next crew to the International Space Station just 47 minutes and 10 seconds from now, Out on the launch pad at Site 31 of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the Soyuz booster is poised for launch, fully fueled, with kerosene and liquid oxygen as the propellant. The Soyuz 2.1A vehicle is the vehicle for crews that launch to the International Space Station from Baikonur. This is the workhorse of the Russian space program, so let's take a closer look at the Soyuz 2.1A booster.
The Soyuz rocket stands 162 feet tall, weighs about 640,000 pounds, and consists of the Soyuz spacecraft inside a protective shroud at the top and the three-stage Soyuz 2.1A booster below. The first stage has 4 liquid engines strapped to the side of the core vehicle. Each will burn for 1 minute and 58 seconds before they drop away. The core engine of the first stage also serves as the second stage and continues to burn until 4 minutes and 57 seconds into the flight. The third stage has a single engine that will ignite before the separation of the second stage, helping to push it away safely. It will burn until the 8 minutes and 46 seconds mark of the flight, and at that point the Soyuz spacecraft will separate from the third stage, having arrived at its preliminary orbit.
The music that you're hearing in the background is actually being piped into the Soyuz descent module for the crew to hear by the engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. This is traditional. The crew picks a selection of music to listen to help them relax in the final hour or so of the countdown. Atop that Soyuz 2.1A booster, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, which is the center section of the 3-section Soyuz capsule, are NASA astronaut Jonny Kim and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergey Ryzhikov and Alexey Zubritsky. The 3 sections of the Soyuz spacecraft are familiar to those who have watched previous missions to the International Space Station. Here's a further look at that Soyuz spacecraft.
The whole Soyuz spacecraft is 24.5 feet long with an overall volume of 301 cubic feet and comprised of 3 modules. The descent module, situated in the middle of the Soyuz vehicle, contains customized seats for the crew members during launch, entry, and landing, and contains all the controls and displays necessary for the flight. It also houses life support systems, batteries for the re-entry and landing, and the parachute and soft landing rocket engines that slow the Soyuz just before touchdown as the spacecraft lands in Kazakhstan. There are 8 hydrogen peroxide thrusters located on the module, which are used to control the spacecraft's orientation, or attitude, during the descent until parachute deployment. The descent module also contains a guidance, navigation, and control system used to maneuver the vehicle during the descent phase of the mission. This descent module is 7.3 feet long with a diameter of 7.1 feet and a habitable volume of 124 cubic feet. It is the only portion of the Soyuz that survives the return to Earth. The orbital module at the top is 9.8 feet long. It connects to the descent module via pressurized hatch. This is where the crew has a small amount of room to move around following launch during the flight to the space station. It has a docking mechanism, hatch, and rendezvous antennas located at the front end. The docking mechanism is used to dock with the space station, and the hatch allows entry into the orbiting complex. The rendezvous antennas are used by the automated docking system, which uses radar, to maneuver toward the station for docking. There is also a forward-looking window in the module that the crew can use to take manual measurements of distance and closing speed with a laser rangefinder in the event of failure of the rendezvous radar system. The propulsion module houses the oxygen storage tanks, the main engine, and the attitude control thrusters, avionics, and communication and control equipment. The propulsion portion of this module handles all orbital maneuvers, including those needed for the rendezvous with the space station and the deorbit burn at the end of the spacecraft's mission. Before they are deployed, the 2 solar arrays are folded against the body of the propulsion module, which, along with the orbital module, separates from the descent module after the deorbit burn. The solar panels span almost 35 feet. The entire spacecraft serves not only as a crew transport vehicle to and from the space station, but also as an emergency return vehicle in the unlikely event that the crew needs to leave the station unexpectedly.
Once again, a good look at the base on the launch pad. This is launch pad 6 at Site 31 of the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Soyuz 2.1A booster, fully fueled, ready to launch just 42.5 minutes from now to send Jonny Kim, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Alexey Zubritsky on a fast 2-orbit, 3 plus 15-minute rendezvous to the International Space Station. The Soyuz will be launching into what is called a phase angle of 14.6 degrees. This basically is akin to you coming onto an on-ramp onto the freeway, hitting the right lane in the freeway for the most efficient path to your destination. In this case, the destination being the International Space Station, with the launch timed to the moment when the Earth's rotation brings the Baikonur Cosmodrome into the plane or corridor of the launch pad and the International Space Station. Once the launch takes place, the launch milestones during the ascent phase will follow as such. The launch escape tower jettison is marked at plus 1 minute 54 seconds, just 4 seconds before first stage separation. The launch shroud that basically encapsulates the Soyuz spacecraft itself will be jettisoned at the 2 minute 33 second mark into the flight, followed at the 4 minute 37 second mark by second stage shutdown. The second stage will separate about 11 seconds later. The third stage lower skirt will be jettisoned just seconds after that, and then the last 4 minutes of powered flight will be under the power of the booster's third stage engine, which will shut down at 8 minutes and 46 seconds into the mission. That will be followed by spacecraft separation about 4 seconds later, and then the pre-programmed deployment of the Soyuz's solar arrays and navigational antennas will begin. We should be receiving launch day video of the crew's activities, the replay of the activities for Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky in about 8 minutes from now. That feed will be coming to us from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. In the meantime, aboard the International Space Station, the 7 crew members are in their post-sleep period, led by Station Commander Alexey. The station currently flying 262 statute miles over the southern portion of Chile, about to begin a southwest and northeasterly trajectory that will carry it across the central portion of Africa and across the Mediterranean. The station flying at an inclination of 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. All station systems operating in great shape, no issues, as the crew on board the station awaits the arrival of the Soyuz MS-27 and 3 new residents for the complex who will be aboard the station until December. As mentioned earlier, with the arrival of Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky aboard the International Space Station, that will begin the countdown for departure of Don Pettit, Ivan Wagner, and Alexey in the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. They are scheduled to undock from the International Space Station on Saturday, April 19th, following an 11-day handover with their newly arrived Soyuz crewmates. At the point of the undocking of Soyuz MS-26 on Saturday, April 19th, that will mark the official end of Expedition 72 and the beginning of Expedition 73. The demarcation point of expedition to expedition is marked always from Soyuz undocking to Soyuz undocking. On Friday, April 18th, there will be a change of command ceremony in which Ovchinin will hand over command to Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, who will be the commander of the station over the course of the next several months. We're coming up on the T-minus 38-minute mark into the countdown. Again, although the skies are a bit hazy, the temperature is around the 60-degree mark in Baikonur on this mid-morning on Tuesday in the Central Asian desert. All of the Soyuz systems are in good shape as the crew awaits the final minutes of the countdown that will lead to their liftoff and an 8-minute 46-second journey to its preliminary orbit. Some of the countdown highlights down the stretch will include, at the T-minus 7-minute mark, one of the engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur will insert a launch key, a real launch key, into the mechanism that will transition the launch sequence into automatic mode. A minute and a half later, at the T-minus 5-minute 30-second mark, Launch Control will issue a final report that the range at Baikonur is clear and the Soyuz rocket is ready to begin its journey. At the T-minus 4-minute mark into the countdown, onboard systems will be switched to onboard control. The commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated, and the crew members will be closing their helmets to begin placing their suits on oxygen. You now can see the gantry arms beginning to spread away from the Soyuz booster. Those gantry arms closed around the booster on Saturday after it was hoisted to its vertical position at the launch pad to enable technicians access for the hookup of fuel lines and electrical connections to the booster itself. At the T-minus 2-minute 45-second mark into the countdown, the booster tank will be pressurized for flight, optimizing the flow of fuel, helping to add structural support for the rocket. And about a minute later, at the T-minus 1-minute 30-second mark, the ground propellant feed will be terminated, and the Soyuz booster will have its entire load of fuel for its journey uphill to its preliminary orbit. 1 minute before launch, the Soyuz will be declared to be on internal power, and auto sequence start will be poised to begin. There are two umbilical towers that you see almost at the bottom of your screen that are buttressed up against the Soyuz booster. The first umbilical tower will retract from the booster at the T-minus 35-second mark, and about 20 seconds later, the second umbilical will retract. That will initiate the launch command to begin engine sequence start. The engines and the turbo pumps will come up to flight speed. The hold-down arms will be retracted, and Soyuz will be on its way, with launch scheduled at 12:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Central Time, 1:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, 10:47 a.m. in Baikonur. Once again, you're hearing the music that is being piped aboard the Soyuz descent module. This music of choice for Jonny Kim, Sergey Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander, and Alexey Zubritsky, music of their choice to help them relax in the final hour of the countdown. Here in Mission Control in Houston, Flight Director Anthony Varia has polled his team of flight controllers. They are go for launch. That has been relayed to the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, outside of Moscow. Assuming all goes as planned, the Soyuz spacecraft, with Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky aboard, will move into a precise path with a series of engine firings to increase its altitude to match that of the International Space Station, with an automated rendezvous and docking planned to the Prishal module, which is attached to the multi-purpose laboratory module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. That docking is scheduled at around 4:04 a.m. Central Time, 5:04 a.m. Eastern Time, to complete a two-orbit rendezvous to the International Outpost. Once the docking occurs, there will be a brief period of opportunity for the relative motion between the two spacecraft, the Soyuz and the station, to dampen out against one another at the docking interface before the forward docking probe on the Soyuz retracts to basically pull the two docking interfaces flush against one another, allowing hooks to close on both sides of the docking interface. Leak checks will then get underway, leading to a hatch opening that is scheduled in the neighborhood of about 6:20 a.m. Central Time, 7:20 a.m. Eastern Time, enabling Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky to float aboard the station that will be their home until December.
Commander and flight engineer. You can monitor them.
And now, courtesy of Roscosmos, we're seeing the video B-roll from earlier this morning. The first order of business to traditional farewell music. The crew departed the Cosmonaut Hotel, boarding a bus for a 35-minute ride to the integration and suit-up facility at Building 254 inside the Baikonur Cosmodrome. You see the prime crew of Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky. NASA astronaut Chris Williams has served as the backup to Jonny Kim. He will be launching in November on the Soyuz MS-28 spacecraft. Kim and Zubritsky flanking Ryzhikov, about to embark on their first flight into space. This is Ryzhikov's third flight into space, 358 days of spaceflight under his belt. Again, you're watching a video B-roll from several hours ago as the crew departed the parking lot outside the Cosmonaut Hotel crew quarters en route for a 35-minute ride into the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Here you now see, after the crew arrived at the integration building, each crew member underwent final medical exams, suiting up in those Sokol launch and entry suits one by one. As you see, the crew members moved into a mock-up of a Soyuz spacecraft seat, allowing technicians to conduct pressure checks, ensuring that their suits were airtight and free of any leaks. As you'll see in a minute, the crew was separated from a fairly large throng of well-wishers and the media through a protective pane of glass to maintain their quarantine, as the RSC Energia technicians conducted the leak checks on their Sokol launch and entry suits.
Remember when Mr. Sergey is super really excited?
Once again, this is video B-roll from several hours ago. The crew having completed their medical checks and suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits. One by one, undergoing leak checks to their suits to ensure that they're airtight before departing the integration building for the ride out to Launch Pad 6, Site 31, and their subsequent climbing on board the Soyuz booster. A good view of Jonny Kim preparing for his first flight into space. While we watch this video B-roll, the countdown is now approaching the T-minus 25.5-minute mark until liftoff. All systems remain in great shape on the Soyuz booster and the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft.
He's got a pressure gauge on his wrist, so he's watching the pressure.
With those leak checks having been completed, you'll see in a moment family members and invited guests looking on across that protective pane of glass, maintaining quarantine. This suit-up procedure now completed, and that occurred a little over 5 hours prior to launch. As you can hear, Ryzhikov and Zubritsky there exchanging final remarks with senior NASA and Roscosmos managers. Jonny Kim did as well. This was a final opportunity to receive a status on vehicle preparations and final expressions of good luck before they departed for the launch pad.
Say that one more time. I'll try.
What are you going to do in space on the first day?
I'm going to look at the Earth. I'm going to think of you guys. And I'm going to try and give you a call.
You make me some tacos in space.
There's Chris Williams next to Sergey Zubritsky. That was the backup crew for Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky. Part of the entourage of invited guests, and there you see Roscosmos officials. The new head of Roscosmos.
Thank you for sticking to the quarantine. It was wonderful to speak with you. And Alexey, for you especially, best of luck on your first flight. Jonathan, all the best to you. It was wonderful to meet you. All the best. We are cheering for you. We look forward to having you back on the ground. May you complete the program in full and return back safely. Everything is going per plan. We are moving per the timeline. Everything is going smoothly. I want to wish you a good flight and all the best of luck. Thank you, sir. Please send our best to the crew that is on board. They are standing by, waiting for you. May you have a good handover, a good, smooth launch.
And I know the crew on orbit is ready to meet you.
Station's ready. We're excited to have you guys on board. Ground teams are ready. Flight crew is ready. I'm looking forward to your docking shortly.
Thank you, Ken.
Sergey, Alexey, Jonathan, all the best to you. May you have a successful launch, a smooth flight, and a great docking. All the best.
And you see there Ken Bowersox, NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Dana Weigel, the ISS Program Manager, part of the NASA delegation there in Baikonur. As tradition called for, the crew members then left the 254 integration building, allowing Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander there in the middle, to report that he and his crewmates were ready to proceed to the launch pad.
We are ready to perform the full flight plan. Wonderful. We are glad that you're ready.
And as you can see, a few final waves to the gathered guests. The crew then boarding their bus for the ride to launch site 31. This occurred about 3.5 hours ago. That trip from the building 254 integration facility to the launch pad took a little less than an hour to complete across that sprawling and desolate launch complex. The gathering of all of these well-wishers contributing to the wow factor for these launches. Kim there, as you see through the window of the bus, Zubritsky alongside of him, waving goodbye to the crowd as they began to exit the parking lot en route to launch pad 6, site 31, where they then boarded their rocket, as you'll see here in a moment or two. And here is the crew's bus arriving at the launch pad. You'll see the crew escorted to the stairs of the pad, climbing a few stairs and waving goodbye to well-wishers before entering the elevator for the ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket, boarding their spacecraft, which they have now been aboard for the past 2 hours. Once again, final opportunity for the 3 crew members to wave goodbye to the well-wishers at the launch pad before climbing those few stairs, riding the elevator up to the entrance level and the hatchway to the Soyuz descent module to be helped into their respective seats. Sergey Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander, in the center seat of the Soyuz, flanked to his left by Zubritsky, who is board engineer number 1, and to Ryzhikov's right is Jonny Kim of NASA, board engineer number 2. Back now live with a view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster, the countdown approaching the T-minus 17-minute mark. The International Space Station is flying from southwest to northeast across the Atlantic at the moment, about to cross the west coast of Africa. At the time of launch, the station will be flying 260 miles over northwest Uzbekistan. The station will be about 400 miles behind Soyuz and will pass directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome 1 minute after Soyuz lifts off. It then will leapfrog past the Soyuz as Ryzhikov, Zubritsky, and Kim climb to their preliminary orbit. 8 minutes and 46 seconds after launch, the third stage engine of the Soyuz booster will shut down. The Soyuz will separate from its launch vehicle and deploy its solar rays and navigational antennas. At that point, the 3 Soyuz crew members will trail the station by 1,008 miles, and the chase will begin, resulting in docking to the Prishal node module on the Earth-facing side of the station's Russian segment at around 4:04 a.m. Central Time, 5:04 a.m. Eastern Time. The music that you're hearing once again being piped into the descent module for the pleasure of the 3 crew members on board. This is traditional, the crew picking a variety of its own music so that it can have an opportunity to relax in the final hour of the countdown.
Готовность к пуску 10 минут, первый. Готовность к пуску 10 минут, принял 20-й. Готовность к пуску 10 минут, принял 30-й. Готовность к пуску 10 минут, принял 50-й. Готовность к пуску 10 минут, принял 60-й. Готовность к пуску 10 минут, принял 70-й. Принята готовность к пуску 10 минут, первый.
Forwarded 10 minutes readiness.
Готовность 10 минут.
We copy 10 minutes readiness.
The countdown has now reached the T-minus 14-minute 20-second mark at the launch site on the steppe of Kazakhstan. NASA officials on hand to watch the beginning of the journey for Jonny Kim, Sergey, Ryzhikov, and Alexey Zubritsky. Leading that NASA delegation on hand for the launch today is Ken Bowersox, who you saw a moment ago in the video B-roll, NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Johnson Space Center Acting Director Steve Kerner, ISS Program Manager Dana Weigel, Kjell Lindgren, the Deputy Director of Flight Operations here at the Johnson Space Center, and NASA's Chief Astronaut, Joe Acaba. And with them is NASA Public Affairs Officer Shaniqua Vereen, who filed this report a short time ago.
Thanks, Rob. I'm here at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The morning is clear and crisp as we await the launch of Soyuz MS-27. I'm currently positioned about 2 miles from Launch Pad 31, where the Soyuz rocket stands poised and ready for liftoff. The weather is ideal with a temperature of about 62 degrees Fahrenheit and a gentle breeze between 5 and 10 miles per hour. The past week has been quite eventful as we prepared for this moment. Our journey kicked off on Friday afternoon when we arrived in Baikonur, escaping the snow back in Moscow. Early Saturday morning, the Soyuz MS-27 was rolled out to the pad, setting the stage for the rocket's upright position in anticipation of launch. This mission will carry NASA astronaut Jonny Kim, along with his Roscosmos crewmates Sergey, Ryzhikov, and Alexey Zubritsky, to the International Space Station. During yesterday's press conference, Jonny outlined his objectives for the mission, highlighting the significance of the research and experiments he plans to conduct. He expressed particular enthusiasm for cancer drug research, hoping that these findings will continue to aid in the fight against various forms of the disease on Earth. In a heartfelt moment at the press conference, Jonny also shared insights into the crew's zero-G indicator. He mentioned that it was a little angel and that Soyuz commander Sergey Ryzhikov gave each of them one to bring to their spouses, something for them to see and think of while we're away. For now, Rob, we're stationed at the viewing site, ready for launch. Jonny is supported here by his family, friends, and NASA colleagues, all eager to cheer him on as he embarks on this journey. We'll hand it back to you in Houston as the final countdown continues toward liftoff.
Thank you, Shaniqua. That countdown now has reached the T-minus 11-minute mark. We're about 4 minutes away from the point at which the launch key will be inserted in the launch bunker into the mechanism that basically triggers the launch sequence into automatic mode. As mentioned earlier, after liftoff, the vehicle will arc out to the northeast from the Baikonur Cosmodrome into an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. 1 minute 58 seconds after launch, we will see first stage separation on the Soyuz 2.1A booster, followed about 2.5 minutes after that by second stage shutdown and separation. The third stage engine on the booster will fire for an additional 4 minutes, heading uphill toward the preliminary orbit for the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft. Third stage shutdown scheduled at the 8-minute 46-second mark, followed 4 seconds later by third stage separation, and then the automated pre-programmed commands will begin the deployment of the Soyuz's solar arrays and navigational antennas.
Машина закрыта, КСС в режиме готовности. Повар, я 16-3 вас понял, КСС в режиме готовности.
Visor should be now closed.
Повар, включена видеокамера номер 2.
We're approaching the T-minus 9-minute mark in the countdown. Everything is in great shape. The Soyuz fully fueled for launch. There have been no issues being worked throughout the course of the past several hours by the engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. And as mentioned earlier, the Soyuz will be placed in a trajectory for a 2-orbit rendezvous. This has become customary for crewed missions on Soyuz vehicles to the station. An expedited journey of just over 3 hours from the launch pad. In this case, the docking scheduled at around 4:04 a.m. Central Time, 5:04 a.m. Eastern Time, to the Prishal module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Coming up on the T-minus 8-minute mark in the countdown. Mark 8 minutes until launch.
Минутная готовность. Первый. Минуту готовность принял 20. Минутную готовность принял 30. Минутную готовность принял
T-minus 7 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. We're coming up on the point at which the launch key will be inserted in the launch bunker.
We have readiness. Please report your status. Everything nominal on board.
The call sign that Ryzhikov has selected, as he did for his previous mission as a Soyuz commander, is Favore. Each crew has their own call sign for Soyuz vehicles from launch to docking and then from undocking through landing. So you'll hear those call signs being expressed by the flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, as well as from the blockhouse in Baikonur for the final 6 minutes of this countdown. And the key has now been inserted in the launch bunker. The automated sequence now underway for the final 6 minutes of the countdown. Inside 5.5 minutes until launch. Launch control reporting that the range is clear. The Soyuz rocket ready to begin its journey. Inside 5 minutes. The temperature in Baikonur around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, clear skies, awaiting the liftoff of the Soyuz MS-27 and the next trio of residents to take up occupancy aboard the International Space Station. Coming up on the 4-minute mark in the count. Onboard systems now have been switched to onboard control. And the crew members are closing their helmets, their visors on their helmets, putting them on suit oxygen for the remainder of the countdown.
Baikonur launch.
T-minus 4 minutes and counting.
What is the status of the atmosphere? No clouds.
The fuel lines and the other elements of the rocket engines now being purged with nitrogen that fireproofs them by removing vapors of fuel and oxidizer from the base of the 2.1A booster. Once again, the launch precisely timed for the moment when the Earth's rotation places the Cosmodrome in the plane or corridor of the orbit of the space station, inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. A narrow phase angle for this launch of just 14.6 degrees to facilitate the two-orbit fast-track rendezvous. Coming up on the 2-minute, 30-second mark.
We see the commander And flight engineer, vehicle 1.
The booster tank now being pressurized for flight, optimizing the flow of fuel, helping to add structural support for the rocket on the pad.
Доклады принял, первый.
T-minus 1 minute 40 seconds. The ground propellant feed has been terminated. Coming up on the 1 minute mark, Soyuz about to go on internal power. T-minus 1 minute and counting. About 20 seconds away from the first umbilical retracting from the side of the booster.
Vehicle 2.
Есть переход блока третьей ступени на бортовое питание. Есть отрыв второго блока третьей ступени. Есть отрыв холодный пневмоководных блока И-70.
There's the retraction of the first umbilical.
Есть мачта 30.
Standing by for the second umbilical to retract and initiate engine sequence start. Auto sequence initiated, standing by for engine start. We have main engine start.
Command issued for ignition.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Soyuz MS-27. Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky begin a sprint for a marathon mission on the International Space Station. Good thrust. Soyuz arcing out to the northeast. Good roll, pitch, and yaw program reported.
Thrusters operating nominally.
All first stage engines operating normally according to the engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. 40 seconds into the flight. The vehicle parameters are all reported to be stable.
Stable at 40 seconds. Everything nominal on board.
1 minute into the flight, the International Space Station flying directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The Soyuz booster passing through the area of maximum dynamic pressure.
The crew is feeling good.
All vehicle systems reported to be normal.
Параметры системы управления ракетой-носителя в норме.
90 seconds into the flight. First stage performance nominal.
Everything nominal on board. Copy.
About 15 seconds away from first stage separation.
0848, everything nominal on board.
Standing by for first stage separation.
Roll speed yaw, nominal.
First stage separation reported. The symmetrical departure of the strap-on boosters. Second stage up and running.
First stage separation.
Vehicle parameters all are normal according to the engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. 2.5 minutes into the flight. "36 miles in altitude, 75 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Thrusters operating.
Second stage engines all operating normally.
Copy.
The launch shroud has now been jettisoned as planned. The second stage shutdown will come at the 4-minute 37-second mark into the flight. Launch occurring on time at 12:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Central Time, 10:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Baikonur time. This view now from a camera on the upper stage of the Soyuz booster. 3 minutes 20 seconds into the flight, all vehicle parameters continue to operate as planned.
Thrusters operating nominally, and everything nominal on board. The crew is feeling good.
Good control of the vehicle. Five minutes of powered flight remaining.
Nominal flight. Everything nominal on board.
4 minutes into the flight. All vehicle systems reported to be in great shape.
Second stage.
About 25 seconds to go until second stage shutdown.
Nominal on board. The crew is feeling good.
Ryzhikov reports the crew is feeling good.
30 seconds to second stage separation. Copy.
We're standing by for second stage shutdown and separation.
Nominal. Copy.
Third stage oxidizer tank has been pressurized.
Second stage separation confirmed. Everything nominal on board. The crew is feeling good.
That was the third stage lower skirt that was jettisoned as planned. The Soyuz now flying on the power of its third stage engine with about 3.5 minutes of powered flight remaining. All systems continue to operate in excellent fashion.
Third stage engine operation nominal. Copy, and everything nominal on board.
Strapped into their seats in the center section of the Soyuz MS-27, Sergey Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander, in the center seat, flanked to his left by Alexey Zubritsky, and Jonny Kim of NASA, flanked to Ryzhikov's right.
Roll pitch yaw nominal.
Roll, pitch, and yaw all reported to be in good shape.
Nominal on board.
A pre-programmed set of maneuvers for the Soyuz 2.1A booster coming up on the 6.5 minute mark into the flight. 2 minutes and 20 seconds of powered flight remaining. This third stage engine provides 67,000 pounds of thrust for its 4 minutes of operation to place the Soyuz spacecraft into its preliminary orbit.
Vehicle is
coming up on the 7-minute mark in the flight. Mark 7 minutes. All vehicle parameters continue to operate as planned.
Third stage thruster operating nominally. Copy. The crew is feeling good. Everything nominal on board.
Nothing but good reports coming from the Soyuz back to the flight controllers, not only in Baikonur, but there at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. 7 minutes, 45 seconds into the flight, 1 minute of powered flight remaining.
Двигатель третьей ступени работает нормально.
Third stage, engine operating nominally. Separation expected in 30 seconds.
Eight minutes, 22 seconds into the flight. About 30 seconds of powered flight remaining.
Nominal flight.
A smooth ride uphill so far for Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky.
And favore, you may expect
Standing by for third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation. And we have third stage shutdown. Third stage shutdown, spacecraft separation confirmed.
favore, how do you read us? This is Moscow. We read.
And we have confirmation of solar array deploy and navigational antenna deploy as planned. Jonny Kim, Sergey Ryzhikov, Alexey Zubritsky on their way to the International Space Station.
Принято фаворы, отключаем биос 2, РП-1, закрываем РПВ-1, 2 и потом приступаем к контролю ТС. РПВ-1, 2, закрыть. Принято.
It is complete. Copy.
Контроль ТС штатно. Выполняем запуск сразу контроля КГ. Принято, ожидаем дозвонения.
Checkout was nominal. Copy.
Фаворов командир может приступать к работе с телевидением.
Favor, you may start working for page 36.
Вас понял, разовый контроль запущен, работа с телевидением.
We started the checkout. TV is on.
Фавор, ожидаем от вас первый замер по АКГ.
So, after a flawless countdown, an uneventful ride uphill for 8 minutes and 46 seconds for Jonny Kim of NASA and Roscosmos cosmonauts, Sergey Ryzhikov and Alexey Zubritsky. Third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation came right on time at the 8-minute 46-second mark into the flight, followed seconds later by solar array deploy and the unfurling of the navigational antennas that will guide the Soyuz to what is expected to be an automated docking to the Prishal module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station at about 4:04 a.m. Central Time, 5:04 a.m. Eastern Time.
Indicator mode. Produce power.
Принято. Фаворы, перейдите на input 2 на формат ТВС.
Favor, please go to input 2 panel.
And this view, which is the same view as the crew is seeing on board the descent module, showing the display panel that Ryzhikov, Kim, and Zubritsky are looking at. You see in the box on the left-hand side, this is basically the same overlaid video that you'll be seeing in more granular detail a few hours from now when we come back for our rendezvous and docking coverage.
Выполнил переход.
Transition complete.
Фаворы.
Favor.
Команду R18.
Send Romeo 18. Command. go to the backup transmitter. Copy, work.
Подготовил, выдаем. Принято.
Ready. Command to send. Copy.
With the ascent having been completed, placing Kim, Zubritsky, and Ryzhikov into their preliminary orbit, next up will be the first in a series of delta velocity burns that is scheduled about 21 minutes from now. This will be a burn of about 24 meters per second to begin to increase the Soyuz's altitude to match that of the International Space Station. At about 1:42 a.m. Central Time, we will move into what are called automated rendezvous operations. The Soyuz will be guided through a series of pre-programmed commands until it reaches the neighborhood of the International Space Station, at which point the Core's automated rendezvous system will guide the Soyuz in for a fly-around of the station that will precisely align the forward docking probe with the Prishal module on the Earth-facing side of the station. Once the fly-around is complete, the Soyuz will stop its motion, put the brakes on, if you will, for a few moments to allow the Russian flight controllers there in Korolyov to measure the alignment of the Soyuz with Prishal before the command will be given for final approach that will result in the docking of Soyuz to Prishal at about 4:04 a.m. Central Time, a little over 3 hours from now.
Moscow. We cannot copy you. Powers, Moscow.
Павор, ответите по Москве, мы вас не слышим.
Powers, Moscow, we cannot copy you.
So to recap, after a flawless countdown, the Soyuz MS-27 atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster lifted off on time at 12:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Central Time, 1:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Eastern Time.
Build a local vertical, copy. Just give us parameter 17 from Form 3, page 37.
With the Soyuz having been successfully placed into its preliminary orbit, the crew will begin a series of vehicle checkouts before the pre-programmed firings of the Soyuz engine will bring the Soyuz to its docking to the station a little over 3 hours from now. We will be back on the air with our rendezvous and docking coverage at 3:15 a.m. Central Time, 4:15 a.m. Eastern Time. Docking scheduled at approximately 4:04 a.m. Central, 5:04 a.m. Eastern Time to bring Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky to their new home in space. We'll take a break after docking, and then we'll be back.